It is the morning of May 31st, 2001, and a group of teenage girls enters the Shinjuku train station. They talk amongst themselves, barely able to contain their excitement. Because for this group of girls, something wonderful is about to happen. Written and illustrated by manga artist Usamaru Furuya, Jisatsu Circle was initially intended as a retelling of filmmaker Sion Sono's 2001 film of the same name. Furuya's original intent was to capture, beat by beat, the surreal, existential drama typical of Sono's films. But when Sono encouraged him to tell his own story, he shifted his narrative to a question that had gone unanswered by his source material. What if one of those girls at the train station had survived? Seiya and Kyoko have been best friends since elementary school. The childlike innocence of their friendship and the trust that goes with it, expressed in the ease with which they say, "I like you the most." 9 years later, Seiya, the sole survivor of the group at the train station, wonders miserably why she has been left behind. Not by Kyoko, but by Mitsuko, the ringleader of the girls, who she has come to idolize. When Kyoko appears moments later, it is to admonish Seiya for her actions and tell her to wake up. Their interaction is strained, and while the girls still appear to be friends, it is clear that their relationship is no longer what it used to be. Like the film, Jisatsu Circle explores the theme of adolescence as a period of profound loss of innocence and the overwhelming sense of detachment, alienation, and inner turmoil that comes from living in a world that no longer feels safe. Kyoko, the narrator of the story, has herself detached from Seiya over the past 9 years. She speaks at arm's length of disturbing developments in Seiya's personal life, like the mental breakdown and hospitalization of her father, her fixation on a self-mutilating musician, her paranoia about a great terror descending onto the earth, and her unsettling drawings. When Seiya had begun selling herself to strange men, Kyoko had begged her to stop, but whether out of frustration or a sense of powerlessness, unequipped to help her friend as a child herself, when Seiya was at her lowest point, it was Mitsuko who acknowledged her fear, who appeared in front of her and smiled. Seiya went to that train station with 54 other girls, but only one mattered. In the weeks following the loss of Mitsuko, she becomes a shell of her former self. After being beaten by another student, who plasters photos of her exploitation around the school, only Kyoko, who tears down the images in anger, seems concerned. Seiya, dissociated, tells Kyoko that she is envious of her ability to relate to herself, that she has lost something. But Kyoko does not understand. From her perspective, Seiya's circumstances became worse after her association with Mitsuko. She sold herself to more men. She was late for school as she walked Mitsuko to her own school in the mornings. After school, she would return to Mitsuko to listen to her and do as she asked. And yet she smiled more. She was happier. It is often difficult for an outsider to understand why a friend would willingly join a cult or engage with a destructive counterculture, because it appears so obvious that the group is manipulative or controlling. There is greater likelihood that the actual reason for devotion, depression, hopelessness, and disillusionment goes ignored. If we assume that Kyoko, the narrator of the story, is retelling these events in a way that minimizes her lack of care towards Seiya out of guilt, then there may be far more harsh, unsympathetic moments from her than we see. At one point, Kyoko mentions disappearing from Saya's life for 2 months to engage with a member of the opposite sex, and it is implied that the man is much older than she is, a predator. When they part ways, Kyoko, once again, needs Saya. But through Kyoko's eyes, while we come to understand the issues troubling Saya, there is never any intimate acknowledgement of what she needs. Saya has become an observer of her own life, vaguely aware of what it means to be a daughter or Kyoko's friend. But she no longer knows what it means to be Saya. Her drawings go from disturbed to a sea of black. The student who attacked her is found lifeless beneath a fire escape. Detectives assume she jumped. The school is buzzing. News of their schoolmate's death takes a back seat to the other students' sudden fascination with Saya. They don't know how they missed it, but there's something special about her. Something otherworldly. Something divine. The sentiment swells as the girls begin to speak up for Saya, as they begin to follow her around. Kyoko watches from a distance as one more person joins, and then another. Her and Saya stop walking home together, and Kyoko does not see her for 6 weeks during a holiday break. When they return, Saya has amassed a small crowd. They carry her bag and walk her to school. They surround her in the evenings, and sob as she acknowledges them and bears witness to their pain. Brimming with questions about these strangely familiar scenes, Kyoko is suspicious when she is approached by a teacher who claims to have answers. Throughout the chapters, we've seen snippets of Takeuchi-sensei looking at forum posts about Saya and at the exploitative photos that had been put up in the school. He tells Kyoko to come to his place just after midnight and to not tell her family. Although worried he has ulterior motives, Kyoko sets out, braving rain, a deserted subway car, and a strange hallucination resembling a much younger Saya. When she arrives at the apartment, Kyoko braces herself for the worst. But despite the situation, Takeuchi-sensei does exactly as promised. He shows her a website, ruins.com, where anonymous users have been posting hundreds of comments about Saya, sharing stories, photos, and renderings of her as a religious figure. One user claims to have found money after catching a glimpse of her in the street. Another claims to see her at their bedside every night. A third user posts a year-old picture of Saya, covered in injuries, that they had taken without paying her. Takeuchi-sensei also has a story to tell. One about a student from his previous school. Yoko Suzuki was a bitter, unpleasant child with no friends. But after her 3rd summer at Ada Middle School, her disposition changed. She'd befriended and formed a club with 3 girls from another school, and was so much happier for it. In a tragic turn of events, a few months later, all but one of the girls takes their own lives. Following her club's passing, Suzuki schoolmates suddenly begin to idolize her, drifting into her orbit. Light returns to her gaze, the way it had after meeting Keiko Ota, the leader of her now defunct club. But as far as anyone knew, Suzuki had never addressed Ota by her real name. She knew her as Mitsuko, and as far as anyone knew, Saya had never addressed Suzuki by her real name. She knew her as Mitsuko. A curse, a ghost, a demon, whatever Mitsuko is, it has been spreading for some time. Takeuchi-sensei shares a website that can only be accessed for 11 minutes after midnight, where the name of every poster appears to be that of a student that has already fallen victim to this chain of events. Even more bizarre is that the users started posting after their deaths. Kyoko, realizing what this means for Saya, becomes pensive. She reveals more about her past, and we learn that when her parents and older brother had perished in a fire 5 years ago, and she had to live with her grandfather, Saya had stayed by her side the entire time. She asks herself, what if she had done the same? Is it too late? By now, it has become difficult to say where Saya ends and Mitsuko begins. She mocks Kyoko for asking to speak to her as a friend, declaring herself an object of worship, yet becomes enraged when she sees a picture of Kyoko leaving Takeuchi-sensei's home after her midnight visit. She believes that Kyoko has abandoned her for male attention again, and that the man is a teacher, no less. Many of her so-called customers had been teachers, and her disgust for them and her longtime friend reaches a boiling point. When Takeuchi-sensei confronts Saya in class, asking who is really pulling her strings, something flickers in her gaze. For a moment, she appears to be fighting, but just as quickly as her fight surfaces, it disappears. Surging with rage, she declares that she hates men like Takeuchi-sensei. Less than a week later, his lifeless body is found floating in a river. Kyoko is at the end of her rope. With Takeuchi-sensei gone, and no one else who understands what is happening to Saya, she confronts her, but is drugged and subdued by one of Saya's followers. While passed out, she sees a ring of girls singing a playground song around Saya and tries to join them. Jolting awake, Kyoko finds herself on a subway, surrounded by Mitsuko. She begins to spiral. What will she do without Saya? They have been friends all her life. She is vaguely aware of what it means to be a granddaughter, or Saya's friend, but she no longer knows what it means to be Kyoko. It is the afternoon of September 21st, 2001, and Kyoko wakes to find herself holding hands with a group of girls, including her best friend, Saya. They haven't spoken in a while, and Kyoko fears they have grown apart. But against a rush of memories, they begin to talk about their childhood, their plans, and their regrets. They talk for a long time, laughing and reminiscing, but in the middle of their conversation, Saya's face distorts, and she is gone. Don't cry, Kyoko, because very soon, something wonderful will happen.